The celebration had lasted 3 days across 17 star systems, and Dr. Elena Vasquez was sick of it. She stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above New Geneva, watching the parade of ships below humanity's newest crown jewel, a space city built from the grateful donations of 47 alien species. The Ulari had contributed their finest crystal matrices, the Thoraxians their bioadaptive hulls, and the Crow-Dominion their most advanced shield generators. All gifts, they said, for the species that had saved them from extinction. 5 years ago, humanity had stood alone against the architects, those ancient entities that recycled civilizations like gardeners pruning overgrown weeds. 12 mysterious Nyx ships, older than recorded history, had emerged from Earth's shadows to turn the tide. Admiral Marcus Chen had led the final assault, his tactical brilliance coordinating alien and human forces in a desperate last stand that should have failed. Instead, they won. The architects retreated into the dark between galaxies, defeated for the first time in millions of years. Chen became a hero, humanity became saviors, and the galaxy entered a golden age of peace and prosperity under human guidance. Elena should have felt proud. Her xenobiology research had helped decode alien physiologies, allowing human medics to treat wounded soldiers from dozens of species during the war. She'd personally saved thousands of lives, earned medals from governments across the galaxy, and now held a prestigious position in the Galactic Health Initiative. But something was wrong. It started with the report small things, easily dismissed. Birth rates among the Kethani had dropped by 30% over the past 2 years. The Zephyrians, once prolific traders, had withdrawn from most commercial routes. Several minor species had requested voluntary relocation to human-administered worlds, citing unexplained population pressures on their homeworlds. Elena's official job was to monitor galactic health trends, but her security clearance only went so deep. Whenever she requested detailed data from human-administered colonies, she received sanitized summaries that raised more questions than they answered. Dr. Vasquez? A voice behind her made her turn. Kethera, one of the Ulari scientists on her team, approached with the fluid grace of her species. Her translucent skin flickered with patterns of concern. I have those population surveys you requested. Elena accepted the data pad, noting how Kethera's fronds trembled slightly. The Ulari were empathic by nature, their emotions visible in the play of light beneath their skin. Right now, Kethera looked terrified. Is there something specific I should know about these numbers? Elena asked gently. Kethera glanced around the observation deck, confirming they were alone. The Sector 7 colonies, she whispered. Something is wrong. My cousin works in the medical stations there. She says the humans bring their own doctors, use their own equipment. They don't let local medics treat their own people anymore. Elena frowned. Medical standardization, maybe? We've been working to establish consistent treatment protocols across all colonies. No. Kethera's skin flashed deep red. They're not treating. They're taking samples. Blood, tissue, reproductive cells. My cousin tried to ask questions, and they transferred her to a mining station in the Outer Rim. Before Elena could respond, her communicator chimed with a priority message from Admiral Chen's office. A summons to the strategy room aboard the flagship Redemption, effective immediately. Elena left Kethera with promises to investigate, but as her shuttle approached the massive human dreadnought, unease settled in her stomach like lead. The Redemption had been Chen's flagship during the war, a symbol of human determination and alien cooperation. Now it looked different somehow. Sharper. More predatory. The strategy room was crowded with human officers Elena didn't recognize, faces harder than she remembered from the war years. Chen stood at the center, studying a holographic display of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas under enhanced human oversight, and Elena noticed with growing alarm that those zones had spread significantly since her last briefing. Elena, Chen said without turning around. Good timing. We need your expertise on an urgent matter. She approached the display, noting that several species' homeworlds now showed red designations. What kind of expertise, Admiral? Resource optimization. Chen's voice carried the same calm authority that had inspired troops during humanity's darkest hour, but something underneath had changed. Something colder. We've been monitoring concerning trends among our partner species. Declining productivity, increasing resistance to integration protocols, possible security threats. Elena stared at the display. Integration protocols. Cultural and biological adaptation programs, another officer explained. Helping less advanced species align with human standards for efficiency and security. Standard post-conflict stabilization. The word sounded reasonable, but Elena's xenobiology training screamed warnings. Admiral, what exactly are these programs doing to the alien populations? Chen finally turned to face her, and Elena barely suppressed a gasp. The man who had once held alien children in his arms after battle, who had wept at memorial services for fallen Olari warriors, now looked at her with eyes like chips of ice. They're helping them evolve, he said simply. Humanity saved this galaxy, Elena. We've proven we have the strength, the intelligence, the moral clarity to guide other species toward a better future. Some need more help than others. Elena's hands trembled as she accessed the detailed files Chen's clearance provided. What she saw made her knees weak. Sterilization programs disguised as vaccination drives. Genetic modification experiments labeled as enhancement therapy. Entire populations relocated to facilities that looked disturbingly like the concentration camps from Earth's darkest historical chapters. Marcus, she whispered, using his first name for the first time in years. What have we become? His expression didn't change. We've become what the galaxy needs us to be. What it's always needed, leaders strong enough to make the hard choices. These aren't hard choices, Elena said, her voice rising. This is genocide. Slow, systematic, but genocide. The room fell silent. Every human officer stared at her with expressions ranging from confusion to hostility. Elena realized with horrible clarity that she was the anomaly here, not them. She was the one out of step with humanity's new direction. I think you need some time to process this information, Chen said carefully. Perhaps a reassignment to one of our outer colonies would help you gain perspective on what we're trying to accomplish. Elena knew a threat when she heard one. She nodded slowly, keeping her face neutral. Of course, Admiral. I'll prepare my transfer requests immediately. But as she left the redemption, Elena's mind was already racing toward a different kind of preparation. She needed to contact Kethera. She needed to find out how deep this corruption went. And she needed to discover the truth about humanity's victory over the architects. The investigation took her 3 months and nearly cost her life twice. Working in secret, using her legitimate research as cover, Elena discovered a network of human facilities hidden throughout the galaxy. What she found there defied comprehension. In laboratories built into hollow asteroids, human scientists conducted experiments that would have made the architects proud. They were perfecting techniques for biological control, selective breeding programs to make alien species more docile, genetic viruses that reduced fertility rates, neural implants that suppressed independent thought. But the worst discovery came when she accessed the classified files from the original war against the architects. The truth was buried under layers of security so deep that Elena had to enlist the help of a rogue AI to crack the encryption. Humanity hadn't defeated the architects. They had made a deal. The files were fragmentary, but the pattern was clear. In the final hours of the war, as human and alien forces prepared for what everyone believed would be a suicidal last stand, Admiral Chen had received a communication from the architect fleet. Not a threat or a demand for surrender, but an offer. The architects were tired. Millions of years of culling galactic civilizations had served their purpose. The galaxy was stable, life was diversified, evolution continued on its intended path. They were ready to retire, to sleep in the dark between stars. But they needed successors. They needed a species with the strength to maintain the system they had built, to prevent stagnation and maintain the balance between chaos and order. Humanity had proven itself adaptable, ruthless when necessary, and capable of uniting other species under their leadership. The architects offered them the same role they had played for eons, guardians of galactic civilization, with the authority to prune species that grew too independent, too advanced, or too numerous. The price was simple: humanity would rule, and the other species would serve. Chen had accepted. The final battle had been a carefully orchestrated performance, with the architects playing their role as defeated enemies before withdrawing to the dark. Humanity emerged as heroes, and the galaxy willingly placed itself under human protection. Now the real work had begun. Elena sat in her quarters aboard a medical transport bound for the Kepler station, staring at the evidence she had compiled. Thousands of documents, surveillance footage, testimonies from aliens who had witnessed human atrocities firsthand. All of it painted the same picture: humanity had become the new architects, and they were more efficient than their predecessors had ever been. Her communicator chimed. A message from Kethera, routed through 17 proxy servers and encrypted with keys that changed every few seconds. The Ulari had been busy too. Elena, Kethera's voice was tight with fear and determination. We know about the camps. We know about the experiments. More importantly, we know you're investigating. There are others, humans and aliens, who see what's happening. We're organizing, but we need proof. We need evidence that can reach the whole galaxy. Elena looked at the data in her hands. It was enough to spark a war that would tear the galaxy apart. It was also the only way to stop humanity from slowly strangling every other form of intelligent life. She made her choice. The broadcast began at 0800 Galactic Standard Time, transmitted simultaneously from hidden relay stations scattered across 40 star systems. Elena had used her medical clearance to access emergency communication networks, the same systems designed to coordinate response to galactic health crises. This was a crisis, just not the kind they had been designed for. Elena's face appeared on screens from the Ulari core worlds to the Crow Dominion's military academies. She looked tired, older than her years, but her voice was steady as she began to speak. My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez, Chief Xenobiologist for the Galactic Health Initiative. I am a human being, and I am here to confess my species' crimes. The evidence flowed in a carefully organized torrent. Documents, videos, testimonies, all backed by Elena's own research and corroborated by alien sources across the galaxy. She explained the truth about the war, about humanity's deal with the architects, about the systematic campaign of biological and cultural genocide that had masqueraded as benevolent guidance. By the time she finished, 3 hours later, the galaxy was in chaos. Riots erupted on human colonies. Alien fleets mobilized for the first time in 5 years. The Collective Council, humanity's puppet government, dissolved as alien representatives fled back to their homeworlds. Admiral Chen declared martial law and ordered Elena's arrest, but she had vanished into the network of safe houses that Kethera's resistance had established. For 2 weeks, the galaxy teetered on the edge of war. Human forces, caught off guard by the sudden uprising, struggled to maintain control of their scattered colonies and installations. Alien species that had been passive for years suddenly rediscovered their military traditions, and ships that had been decommissioned as unnecessary in peacetime were hastily restored to active duty. Chen played his final card on a Tuesday. Elena was hiding in an abandoned mining station in the Vega system when Kethera brought her the news. Her friend's skin flickered with patterns of absolute terror as she activated the emergency broadcast. Chen stood in what looked like the bridge of a ship Elena didn't recognize. Behind him, through massive viewports, she could see the distinctive hulls of the 12 Nyx vessels that had supposedly been decommissioned after the war. Citizens of the galaxy, Chen began, his voice carrying the same authority that had once inspired hope. For 5 years, humanity has provided stability, protection, and guidance to countless species. We have prevented wars, ended famines, and guided your civilizations toward unprecedented prosperity. Elena's blood ran cold as she recognized the tone. This was the voice of someone about to commit an unthinkable act and justify it as necessary. Recent terrorist attacks orchestrated by extremist factions have threatened this peace, Chen continued. Lies and propaganda have been spread by those who would rather see the galaxy return to the chaos and violence that existed before human intervention. We cannot allow this instability to continue. The camera pulled back, revealing the full scope of the Nix fleet. The ancient ships moved with purpose, positioning themselves at key points throughout the galaxy. Each one was aimed at a major alien population center. The Nix vessels have been equipped with architect technology recovered from our victory 5 years ago, Chen announced. This technology allows us to restructure matter at the quantum level. Planets, if necessary, can be returned to their component atoms and rebuilt in more optimal configurations. Elena's hands shook as she realized what he was threatening. He's going to destroy them, she whispered. All of them. Every alien world that refuses to submit. Chen's image leaned forward, his eyes holding the cold certainty of someone who had moved beyond human morality. Species of the galaxy, you have 24 hours to cease all hostile activities and return to your designated territories. Any act of aggression against human interests will result in the immediate restructuring of your homeworld. This is not a negotiation. This is natural selection. The broadcast ended. Elena sat in the silence that followed, feeling the weight of an entire galaxy's despair settling on her shoulders. Around her, alien refugees who had fled human protection, wept or raged or simply stared into space with hollow eyes. She had exposed the truth, and the truth had doomed them all. There has to be something, Cathera said desperately. Some weakness, some way to stop this. Elena pulled up the technical specifications for the Nix vessels, data she had studied during her investigation. The ships were indeed equipped with architect technology, but something about the power signatures looked wrong. The energy output was too clean, too controlled. Cathera, she said slowly, do you still have contacts in the deep space monitoring stations? Some. Why? I need readings from the galactic edge. Specifically, I need to know if there's been any unusual activity in the dark sectors over the past week. Cathera's fronds flickered with confusion, but she activated her communication array. While they waited for responses, Elena pored over the data she had collected about the architect's original retreat. Something had bothered her about the official reports, a detail that didn't quite fit. The responses came back within hours, and Elena's worst fears were confirmed. Elena, Cathera said, her voice barely a whisper, the monitoring stations are detecting massive gravitational anomalies at 17 different points along the galactic rim. Something is coming back. Something huge. Elena stared at the data, pieces of a horrible puzzle finally clicking into place. The architects never left, she said. They've been watching, waiting to see if humanity could fulfill their role as galactic gardeners. And we failed the test. The truth was worse than anything Elena had imagined. The architects had expected their successors to maintain balance, to prune civilization selectively and carefully. Instead, humanity had begun a campaign of total domination, threatening to eliminate the diversity that the architects had spent millions of years cultivating. Now they were coming back to correct their mistake. Elena activated every communication channel she could access, broadcasting on frequencies that would reach both human and alien receivers. Her face appeared on screens across the galaxy, but this time she wasn't alone. Cathera stood beside her, along with representatives from dozens of alien species and a handful of humans who had joined the resistance. People of the galaxy, Elena began, we have 18 hours before the architects return. They're not coming back to help us or save us. They're coming back to start over because we proved that intelligence can become its own worst enemy. She gestured to the mixed group around her. But we have a choice. We can spend our last hours fighting each other, or we can prove that we've learned something from our mistakes. The architect technology in the Nix ships, it's not just a weapon. It's a communication array. Chen has been using it to coordinate with them, to report on our progress. Elena took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would either inspire hope or condemn them all. We're going to hijack that signal. We're going to tell the architects that we reject their system, their cycle of genocide and renewal. We're going to prove that intelligence can choose cooperation over domination. The plan was desperate and probably suicidal, but it was the only choice they had. Resistance fighters across the galaxy began moving toward human installations, not to destroy them but to capture them. They needed access to the Nix communication systems, and they needed it before Chen could carry out his threat. Elena herself led a strike team toward the command ship where Chen had made his broadcast. As their stolen transport approached the massive vessel, she could see the Nix ships positioning themselves for their final act of terror. In less than 6 hours, entire worlds would cease to exist. The battle for the command ship was brief and desperate. Chen's forces, caught between external attack and internal rebellion, couldn't maintain their defensive lines. Elena found herself face to face with the man who had once been humanity's greatest hero in the ship's main communication center. "You don't understand what you're doing," Chen said, his hand hovering over the firing controls for the Nix fleet. "Without strong leadership, the galaxy will tear itself apart. The architects knew this. I know this." "Maybe," Elena replied, her own hand steady on the weapon she'd never imagined pointing at another human being. "But that's not your choice to make for everyone else." Chen smiled, and for a moment she saw a flicker of the man he used to be. "It was never my choice, Elena. The moment we accepted their offer, we stopped being human. We became something else, something necessary." His finger moved toward the control, and Elena fired. As Chen fell, Elena rushed to the communication array. Around her, aliens and humans worked together to reconfigure the massive system, turning it from a weapon of control into a voice of defiance. In the distance, sensors showed the first architect ships emerging from the dark between stars, vast and terrible and utterly certain of their purpose. Elena activated the communication array, broadcasting on frequencies older than recorded history. Her voice, multiplied by the power of 12 ancient ships, reached across the galaxy and beyond. "Architects," she said, "this is Elena Vasquez, speaking for the species of this galaxy. We reject your system. We reject the idea that intelligence must be pruned and guided and controlled. We choose chaos over oppression, diversity over uniformity, hope over certainty." She paused, feeling the weight of billions of lives hanging on her next words. "You gave humanity the power to rule, and we chose to become tyrants. But we're not the only voice in this galaxy anymore. The other species have found their strength, and together we're choosing a different path." The response came not in words but in images broadcast directly into the minds of every intelligent being in the galaxy. The architects showed them their history, countless civilizations that had risen to prominence, been given the same choice, and chosen domination over cooperation. Every time, the cycle repeated: war, oppression, eventual collapse, and renewal. But this time was different. This time, the oppressed had risen up not just against their human overlords but against the system itself. For the first time in millions of years, a galaxy had said no to the architect's vision of guided evolution. Elena felt the massive alien intelligence considering, weighing, deciding. Then, like a storm breaking, the pressure lifted. The architect ships began to withdraw, not in defeat but in something like surprise. They had never encountered a galaxy that rejected their guidance entirely, that chose uncertainty over control. The message they left behind was simple: the cycle ends. Your fate is your own. Across the galaxy, the Nix ships powered down. Human forces, leaderless and demoralized, began surrendering to alien coalition fleets. The concentration camps opened, the experimental facilities shut down, and slowly, carefully, the work of rebuilding began. Elena didn't live to see the new government that emerged from the ashes of human dominion. The effort of hijacking the architect communication system had exposed her to energies that human biology wasn't designed to handle. She died 3 days after the broadcast, surrounded by friends from a dozen different species. But her final message, recorded in the hours before her death, became the founding document of the new Galactic Cooperative. We learned that strength without wisdom is tyranny, that victory without humility is defeat, and that the greatest courage is admitting when your people are wrong. The galaxy belongs to all of us, or it belongs to none of us. We choose to share it. Kethera, now serving as one of the cooperative's first elected leaders, kept Elena's message playing on a loop in her office. It reminded her, and everyone who visited, that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance not just against external threats, but against the darkness that can grow within any species that believes it has the right to rule over others. The stars still shone in the darkness between worlds, but now they illuminated a galaxy where intelligence had chosen cooperation over conquest, diversity over domination, and hope over the terrible certainty of cycles that never end. Humanity was no longer in charge, and for the first time in 5 years, the galaxy was free.